we're going to be a lot of different places, but I'm just going to jump right in because that song and what Emma shared, I couldn't even remember what the song was when I saw the song title, frankly, so I didn't know what she was going to share, but it fits perfectly with the first talking points question. So we're just going to jump right in to that. Those are in your bulletin, so if you open up, there should be in your bulletin. The first talking points question says, when you think about glorifying God, what comes to mind? So when you think about glorifying God, what comes to mind? Take a minute and turn to your table mates. If you're sitting alone or with only one or two people, I would like to encourage you to clump together because your conversation will be sweeter. But when you think of glorifying God, what comes to mind? Take a minute, talk about it, go. Okay, so what comes to mind when we talk about glorifying God? Like what kinds of things, whether they could be activities, areas of your life, etc. What are some things that come to mind when you glorify God? Elba in the back, what did you guys come up with? Obedience, doing things that please Him. Good, awesome, we'll come back to that a little bit. How about over here, Jamie, what were you laughing at? Do I want to know? Okay, so somebody else at the table, what did you guys, glorifying God, did you even talk about what I asked you to talk about?
I tried. I said everything.
Everything, okay, everything, including the howler monkey. Yes. It is true, absolutely, good, okay. I don't know, how about over here, somebody at your table? Hadassah, Cindy, yeah, the Jeffs. I love that default, yeah, the ones that drive you crazy. In fact, especially, like Jesus says, especially the ones we don't like. If you love your neighbor, even the unbeliever, or if you love your friend or those who love you, even the unbeliever does that. What about, what does it look like to love the people that don't love you back, right? Like that idea. So I love how how you went to, Jesus talks about, like what glorifies God? Loving God, loving people, making disciples, absolutely. So we think about this idea of like, what does it look like to glorify God? And even in your answers, which were really like obeying Him, etc. A lot of times, a little bit what Jeff was talking about. We live during the opening. We live in this like bifurcated life as Christians. We have this idea of like the secular sacred, and the Bible doesn't speak that way. You know, the Bible for us as Christians, there is no secular sacred divide. Yeah, if you know what I mean by that, like this idea that we sort of have our religious life, our God glorifying life, and that looks like being obedient, that looks like loving God and loving people. But even in the act of, let's say, okay, I need to, I'm going to go love my neighbor as myself because that's a God glorifying moment. Even if I'm in that good place of glorifying God in that moment, it's almost like, okay, I'm going to do that. And while I'm doing that, I'm glorifying God, and then I'm going to get back to the rest of my life. And we tend to think that way. And we also tend to think that way, meaning this bifurcated, like is what parts of my life glorify God, and what parts of my life are just me living. Like whether that's living to my own wants and needs, or just living to survive. Right? Like this, and so we tend to live that way, even subconsciously. And so we have this divide in our lives, and that permeates every area of our lives, including how we see our work, whether work is an occupation, whether work is like outside of the home, going to work somewhere, which is happening less and less for all kinds of reasons, which has kind of made this work-rest thing even more confusing because more people are working from home, and so it's bleeding together. Like where's my work space And where's my home, my rest space? We don't even physically have that as often as we used to. Or maybe you're a homemaker, and that's the toughest job in the world, and so that you're working there in your home, and that messes up, like, when does my work start and my rest, or when does my work end and my rest start? And if you're a mom, probably never, right? You don't ever get around to the second part of that, the rest part. But there's just this idea that we have separated things out in our brains as to their purpose. So I'm going to work, for all kinds of reasons, and we'll talk about what some of those reasons might be in healthy and unhealthy ways today. I'm going to rest for all kinds of reasons, and some of those reasons might be good, and some of those reasons might be bad. And then I'm going to glorify God. And it's almost like it's this separate, in my obedience, in my worship at church, in my Bible reading, in my serving my neighbor. But it's like we have so separated our lives out. And the Jesus way, like to follow him, when he says, come follow me, is to take all of those things and mash them together. The example I've used here multiple times is, and this wasn't really, this is all just a really long introduction. It's going to take us a while. But like we have this idea, like if you imagine your whole life is your hand, and we have different aspects of our hand. Right, like we have our work life, we have our play life or our rest life, we have maybe our family, we have our hobbies, and then maybe what we do is we see Jesus, we see this God worship time as an appendage on the hand. And maybe it's the most useful appendage, like the thumb, like us and the howler monkeys, we have opposable digits, which does make us actually a little more useful in the fact that we can go like this. That's a miracle of God right there, that we can do that. But we think Jesus is like that. Jesus is not an appendage that is one more of many things in your life. Jesus is the hand that all of those appendages are attached to. Does that make sense? But we don't see it that way. So what we tend to do is we tend to see the things that we do as these different compartmentalized areas of our life. And what this passage is going to show us today, and it's kind of a weird passage, because if you read it before church, like, what in the world are we doing about meat sacrificed to idols? What? Like, we'll talk about why he's using that as an example in a few minutes. But ultimately, the main point that Paul, the Apostle Paul who wrote 1 Corinthians, is driving us to is, whatever you're doing, whenever you're doing it, wherever you find yourself, bring glory to God. Make that your motivation. Like, if you make that your motivation, then you will work well, you will rest well, you will love your neighbor well, you will be obedient well. Like, if our motivation is, and this is where we'll end up, Lord willing, is asking the question, what in this moment will bring God the most glory? Whatever you're doing, work, rest, play, whatever it is, that's what he wants you to be doing. Does that make sense? It's what brings God the most glory. And so we're sort of wrapping up this Experiencing God study that we've been in this summer. And I was trying to think of a way to sort of bridge the Experiencing God study with where we're going next week, starting Exodus. There's a handout in your bulletin that sort of outlines the first part of the Exodus series. And I thought we would talk about today experiencing God in work and rest. How do we experience God in both our work and our rest? So rather than have you turn to 1 Corinthians, I'm going to have you go back to our calling passage in Genesis chapter 1. Should be easy to find. So we're going to start there. Again, this is just part of a really long introduction because hopefully the points will not take us that long. But if we go to Genesis chapter 1 and starting in verse 26. We haven't even gotten to our first point yet. This is just sort of setting the table for this idea of work and rest being a model that we are to follow. Like I'm trying to make the argument right up front that we are to be creatures of cadence, and that cadence is working and resting for the glory of God. So, Genesis chapter 1:26. Jeff already read it, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read through parts of it. In verse 26 of Genesis 1, it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness.'" Now, this is a passage we've looked at a lot here at Crosstrain because so much of our theology flows out of Genesis 1, 2, and 3. Like all of the rest of the Bible is really about Genesis 1, 2, and 3. But we're going to look at it this morning from a different perspective. This is not about image bearing. This is not about the creation narrative, as beautiful as those things are. We've talked about that a lot. This is about what was God doing in Genesis 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2 specifically. So when he says, so let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and the heavens and the livestock, etc. Guys, that is vocation. Let him have dominion. He's giving us a job. Like right out of the chute, God is saying, work. Giving us dominion. He goes on, so jump down to verse 28. And verse 27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So we're both image, male and female, are image bearers of God. And it says, and God blessed them, and God said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. And there's that word again, and have dominion. So he's given us purpose right out of the chute. It's to one, multiply, and two, have vocation. That vocation is to subdue the earth. It's to cultivate the earth. He's given us dominion over every plant, every animal, etc. Ultimately, what he's done is he said, you guys are my vassal kings and queens. Right? You guys are my representatives as kings and queens in my kingdom. That's what we were meant to be. Now look at verse 31. It says, and God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. All of this is part of what theologians would call part of the kingdom mandate or the creation covenant. It's the first covenant that God makes with us. It's with Adam and Eve before the fall, before anything goes bad, and he says, here's my covenant with you. Your job, your vocation is to run the planet. Right? It's to subdue the earth. That's what he's called us to. So he's telling us, guys, we have this idea that work, and this permeates so much of, like, man, I can't wait to, do we even have one? I don't think we have one. Why don't we have a cowbell? We should have a cowbell, right? Oh, we do have a cowbell. So if I said something like, if I had taken a cowbell and I had dinged it like, what is it, how many times is it? Dun, 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 dun. How many of you would have known what song that starts with? See, Kim's laughing. All right, Scott, what is it? Okay, that's a different one. That's a good one too. All right, that's a good one. What else? Apparently there are a lot of cowbell in the 90s. I'm talking to the old people in the 80s and 90s. Like the rest of you are like, cowbell? Come on. Even like, need more cowbell? Come on. Like what? What? Okay, we got that one. You people are dark, man. Like I guess that fits into the theology of it. Yes. All right, that's right. Lover boys. Working for the, what? Oh my goodness, you people are like way old school. And very impressed with your music knowledge. For me, I guess my music selection was a little smaller. It was Loverboy, Working for the Weekend. Now guys, there are all kinds of, think about how much in our culture, songs, things like come back to that idea of we work to get to something else. And that permeates our thinking, like literally from our first job. Like it is, we're working for the weekend, we're working for retirement, we're working for security, we're working for something. Guys, and so here's what that does to us about how it relates to Genesis 1. We have this idea that work was a product of the fall. Like that we were just supposed to be sitting around on the beach sipping, I don't know what, cool, what? No, yeah, sipping a non-alcoholic drink on the beach for all of eternity. And then Adam and Eve broke everything and it went bad. Guys, before it goes bad, God gives us work. Work is not a product of the fall. It is something he wants from us because it was bringing him glory. Look what he says in verse 31. And it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Now we have a chapter 2 there, but when Moses wrote Genesis, there was no chapter 2. It just kept going. And then it says, thus the heavens and the earth. So just like chapter 1 explained, the heavens and the earth were finished and all the hosts of them. So that's all those stars and things that are singing to the glory of God, as Emma reminded us. And on the seventh day, God finished the work he had done, and he rested. Now, wait a minute. and we'll get there in a minute, about why God rested. But guys, that word rest there in the Hebrew actually gets translated dwell. And so on the seventh day, God dwelt with them. Now think about that in light of like Genesis chapter 3. When things do go bad, how do they know? Like when they run from God and they hide from God, how do they know God is there? Because they hear him in the garden. Why? Because they're used to him dwelling with them. So the work was a means towards something. It was to bring him glory in his presence. He's saying, so he's now going to, God is now modeling for them, hey, here's what it looks like to rest. Just be with me. Be in my presence. It's why Genesis 3, he talks about that. It's why the whole story in Revelation 21 and 22 ends with the presence of God in their midst over and over. Talks about that over and over in Revelation 21 and 22. So he's bringing them to this place of going, and like this idea of, and God rested, God dwelt with them. So look at verse 3. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Now get this, there's a because there. Why did God bless the seventh day and make it holy? Because on it God rested from something. It isn't a holy day just because he rested. So sitting around sipping Kool-Aid on the beach for all of eternity isn't bringing God glory. He's not saying he rested because rest is way better than work. He's saying he rested from something. From all his work that he had done. Which was what? In the end of verse 31. The work he had done was very good. So, your second talking points question says this. Why do you think God rested after creation, and what does that teach us about the rhythm of work and rest? I'm going to give you like 30 seconds. Just talk at your tables, come up with an answer, a better one than everything. Why do you think God rested on day 7? Go. And just so you know, there have been a lot of very heated theological arguments about what it means that God rested, why he rested, what that concept is even showing. So you great theologians among us here at Crosstrain, tell me what you came up with. So Rosenbachs, why did God rest?
To show us that we need to rest.
To model for that rest is okay. I'm guessing, like Carrie was saying in her prayer time, like air quotes, because God never guesses, that he knew what was coming, and he knew that eventually work was going to be really hard, and we were going to need some rest. So there's a huge part of just the rest for rest's sake. What other thoughts do we have? Scott?
There's a lot of 7 in Scripture. There's the Jubilee, the 7 Jubilees, the freedom of the slave.
Right,
It refers to all that as well.
There's this big picture, this picture of the sevens and what do they all represent. There is the year of Jubilee, which was a year of rest for the whole for the whole nation. I'm blanking on the name for it right now, but it doesn't really matter. But the point is throughout Scripture, God is showing us that there is a cadence built into life, and one of those cadences is that we are to be a people who are busy. And we are to be a people who are restful. And we're to figure out what that cadence looks like as we go along. And then, by the way, there's also the brokenness of the world that messes it all up. And so a huge part of it is he is modeling for us this idea that work for good things. And that will bring you rest. That will bring you to a place of rest. So he makes everything good. He makes that man, and he makes his image bearers and then everything's very good. And then he says, and because I have worked, the model I'm giving you is I have worked for very good things. And now I'm going to show you that brings you to a place of rest. So all that to say this, I hope you guys agree that we need to redeem like our image of what work and rest even is. Because we really struggle with that. I mean, we as Christians really struggle with the idea of how do we work and rest well. So I'm going to ask some questions that I'm not going to have you turn and talk about. I just want to give you a minute to think about. But here's the first one of those. How can your work and your rest show that your life belongs to Christ? So that's just as we're going along today, I want you to just think about this. Like how can how you work and how you rest reflect that your life belongs to Christ? And I'm going to ask you some questions to talk about, and we're going to and does it? Like currently does it? And what would it look like for you? Now I just want to ask, I'm not sure, it comes up a little bit later, but how many of you would say you're better at working than resting? How many of you would say that? Raise your hand. If you're better at working than resting, raise your hand. How many of you say it's the other way around? I'm better at resting than working. Okay, a handful. For me, as one of my daughters, I was almost going to call her up here and challenge her to have a little discussion about this. As one of my daughters so lovingly reminded me of the last couple of weeks or this last week, as she heard about what this message was going to be about when we announced it last Sunday, she said, "Hey, Dad," and she's very sweet, and I know she loves me. She says, "Hey, Dad, you stink at this." No. Then she doubles down. She goes, "Actually, Dad, you are the biggest hypocrite I know when it comes to work and rest." She says, no, it keeps going, it gets better. Because then she comes back a few days later and she's like, "Dad, you're good at a lot of things. Like really a lot of things. This is not one of them." Now, guys, please don't hear because there's this idea that goes on among us that somehow my life is just crazy busy. I live an overly full life. Guess what? So do all of you. My life is no more or less busy than any of the rest of your lives. And I really mean that. So she's not saying that to go because you're just trying to do. She's like, she's not wrong. I have struggled with this message this week to even put it together because I know I'm being hypocritical. Jeff and I have kind of joked about it. The dude that sleeps less than I do is him. I don't even know how he does it. Now, saying all that, I'm like, so we look and we go, okay, hypocritical, but guys, that's a symptom of a problem. The fact that I don't rest well isn't because I'm too busy. It's because I don't rest well. And we'll see what we mean by that. And I think that's most of our problem together. So, with that, today's message, in case you haven't figured it out, is working and resting to the glory of God. It's out of 1 Corinthians 10, so turn there in 1 Corinthians 10, and we're going to move through this passage fairly quickly, I'm hoping. So today's simple question is this: what does the Bible have to say about work and rest? What is the Bible? We're going to use this obscure passage from Paul to talk about the principle of work and rest, the pattern of work and rest, and then finally the purpose of work and rest. And that part we've kind of hit already throughout the morning, so that won't take very long at all. So the principle of work and rest. So hopefully you're at 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 23 and 24, and it says, "All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not everything builds up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor." I love how the New Living translates this, so I put it up on the screen. It says, "You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. You say, I'm allowed to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. Don't be concerned with your own good, but the good of others." So he's saying, guys, there's a lot we can do. This is what he's talking about with this. Because there's a lot we can do. Doesn't mean we should. Right? What he's saying, what we should be engaged in are the things that benefit other people. Think about it in the context, like part of this is this idea of doing working and resting, this cadence of life in the midst of other people. Think about in Mark chapter 1, when Jesus has been healing people all night in Peter's mother-in-law's house, and he's been healing people all night, and it says in Mark chapter 1, verse 35, he says, "And early in the morning when it was still dark, Jesus went to a secluded place to pray." Part of what Jesus was modeling there was, hey man, I've been working all night. Now I'm going to go show you what it looks like to rest. Guys, think about the scene in the boat in Mark chapter 4. He's been working hard all day. He's exhausted physically, doing really good stuff. So where do his disciples find him in the boat? Asleep in it, in the middle of a storm. But part of what he's doing there is he's modeling for them, hey guys, here's the cadence of work and rest. But our problem is that, like so often, our work time centers around our own goals, career advancement, financial security, things like that. And our rest time focuses on just, this is what I want right now. And then we wonder, why we walk away. Even if we've had, guys, so many of us come home from our vacations exhausted. I heard a quote once, I can't remember who it was, but he said, there's no man more in need of a vacation than the one who just had one. We don't even vacation well when it comes to resting because we're doing it the wrong way. So let's keep going. So here's the next question. Again, just for you to think about. Does your work build up? Does it serve others? Does it glorify Christ? Or just glorify you? And what is your rest doing to strengthen your soul? So just take a minute and think about that for a minute in your own life, because this is kind of what I've had to wrestle with. And this was even harder for me in my rest life than it was in my work life, probably because of the nature of my work is being a pastor here at Cross Train Church and then being a Bible professor at Arizona Christian University. And so you can almost go, well, of course that's glorifying God, which is not something I should be of coursing, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But at the same time, for me, it's is my rest really doing anything to strengthen my soul? Guys, if your work time is become all about you, if it's becoming meet my needs, help me feel better about myself, get a certain position, a certain title, a certain amount of money, etc., then it's not glorifying God. And if your rest time, guys, and this is where I struggle. Well, I don't have time to go there. So many of us struggle with our rest for a lot, that we rest in unhealthy ways because here's what we think: I deserve this. And the minute we come to our rest moment as I deserve whatever it is, we will start to enter into some really unhealthy ways of resting because we've just justified it in our brain. Well, of course I deserve to watch this thing. Of course I deserve to go to this place, even though I know it's not God glorifying. Of course I deserve it, because look how hard I worked. And that's part of why we struggle so much with healthy work-rest balance. So look at your third talking points question. Why can work feel meaningless when it is pursued apart from God? So we're going to take these one at a time. So I'm going to have you, so the three questions are, why can work seem meaningless when it's pursued apart from God? How can rest be wasted? And then what are some ways we can actually redeem those things? So let's take those one at a time, just quickly at your table. So the first one is what are some ways work can feel meaningless when it's pursued apart from God? Take a minute and just answer that first question together. Go. Okay, so what are some ways work can seem meaningless if we do it apart from God? Over here in the corner table. Okay, means to an end, a rat race, those like that. We just keep going and going and going. Good, awesome. What else? How else can work seem meaningless? Alex. Yeah, I like that. There's no purpose. There's no in order to what in that, right? And so that goes back to sort of the big picture problem, because it's not, remember where we're going to end, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do is where Paul's going to end this passage in verse 31 is do it all for the glory of God. So part of our problem with seeing no purpose in our work is because we have a perspective problem. Like you can be doing, it's not the title or the job description that gives you meaning. Does that make sense? It's what is your motivation that ultimately gives us meaning. So let's talk about rest for a minute. So turn and just answer the second question. How do we waste rest? Go. Okay, so how do we waste our rest time? What? We think we deserve it, so then it takes us down some unhealthy roads. Good, what else? What would our rest be in? Good, like what are we resting in? Awesome, good. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like seriously, like you think about that, like if you have a vacation or something, like the last 2 days of your vacation is ruined because you've already been thinking about, I got to go back to work now, right? We have such a hard time just being present wherever we are. Like that's hugely true. Any others? By doing stuff where you're really not resting, Daniel.
I think sometimes when we rest, we're trying to escape the work. Where I think what God did on his rest was reflect on how good it was.
So he's reflecting on the work, the good work that he did. We're trying to escape from it, to your point, and that leads to Jan's point, we're not really resting. So this guy, Daniel Putman, I think was his name. In 1985, he wrote a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. In 1985, and you know what it was about? How TV is destroying our ability to focus on God. TV. That was in 1985. 22 years later, the iPhone is invented. Has it gotten better? Right, so we have this idea that rest is disengaging by doing something else. And that doing something else can be something as simple as binge watching Netflix or just mindlessly scrolling. Though that is not resting. It just isn't. It isn't this isn't just a biblical thing. This is like study after study shows those things are not in any way restorative to our souls. Like even from a secular point of view of whatever they think the soul is, just your health. Like spending time in those things does not restore health. And the point of rest that we'll see here in a minute is that we need restoration. Like we need some time to just let go and refocus. So that leads us to our next point. So if the first thing is that there's this principle, God modeled it, and the other principle is that it's really rest, our work and rest is meant to be as a cadence for the benefit of others, like in our growth with God. What is the pattern of work and rest? So look at verse 25. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any questions on the ground of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And you're like, wait, what? What does that have to do with anything? Well, here's what's happening. Paul is speaking to a people who are massively divided. The church in Corinth is a divided up train wreck. They are arguing about everything and anything. Who the best teachers are, who they should be listening to, what the best gifts are. That's where he's going to go next. Like it's just over and over. They're arguing about all kinds of things, including, so they're trying to one up each other. Well, at least I don't eat this kind of meat. Like they're dividing up among each other. And what he's trying to say is, guys, there is rest only in one place, the grace of God. Right? There's rest. It's not in what you do. It's not in what you do or don't do. It's in your motivation. It's in the why behind it. So then he goes on and he starts in verses 27 through through 28, he's talking about like, so if meat is, if you go to dinner at somebody's house, don't even ask them where the meat came from. Because if you find out, now there's this whole matter of conscience thing. Should I or shouldn't I eat this meat? But if I don't know, it doesn't really matter because the grace of God has covered it. We're free in Christ, is what he's saying. So she's saying rather than working for obedience, rather than working for holiness, rest in the grace of God. But remember this, it's for conscience sake. So what you do for work and what you do for rest is for conscience, but not just for your own, for the person who invited you to dinner in this case, with the example of the meat. He says in verse 29, I don't mean your conscience, I mean his. But look how he finishes this whole section up. I'm going to put it up on the screen in the New Living. It says, if I can thank God for food and enjoy it, why should I be condemned for eating it? Now wait, what is that? Okay, wait, meat and... Guys, here's how it relates to us today. We are such comparison shoppers. One of the first questions dudes ask each other when they're in a room together is, what do you do? What do you do? Where do you do it? If you're in a group of pastors, it comes around like that. How big's your church? It just does. It's crazy. We do it all the time. I don't even want to get into like mom shaming. Like you moms are brutal on each other. Like seriously, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do, you're not, you're neglecting your children, we are so comparison shopping because we care so much about what other people think. And what Paul is trying to tell us, and that permeates how we function in reality. Like, can we just rest in the grace of God? Can we work in the power of the gospel? He's like, and he's going to get there in a minute. He's like, ultimately, my focus isn't going to be this menial, trivial stuff. It's going to be, are people getting saved or not? Like he's like, my goal in my resting in grace is to work in the power of the gospel, is ultimately what he's going to end up saying. But we are so, guys, and this is where amusing ourselves to death has taken itself to a whole new level. It's not just that we're so distracted and not even doing anything healthy anymore. Guys, FOMO, what does FOMO stand for? Fear of missing out. It is a real thing. Like, it is a real thing. It is destroying this generation of people. Like, my students at ACU are so terrified that they're going to miss out on something. They can't put their phones away for a minute. And it's not just a fear of missing out what's on their phone. As you're scrolling along, guys, study after study is showing this. We are comparison shopping. We're going, this person's living better than I am. This person's going on better vacations than I am. This person has more money than I do. This person is more beautiful than I am. This person is that's what we're doing. And it's killing us. And it's killing us as adults too. Guys, you will never, I'm just telling you, I've said it over and over, you will never leave your time in social media feeling better. You just won't. Yeah, but I have all these funny things that come up. Because I'm just telling you that those few moments of funny in the midst of all of the soul-sucking FOMO comparison it's just not a deal worth making. It's just not. Man, I was going to just be off Facebook for a little while. I haven't been back. Free at last! Free at last! Praise God Almighty! I am free at last! Guys, join me. Like, seriously. It's just watch and see how God doesn't redeem the time. It's just crazy. All right, another question to ask, and I know we're running way out of time. How does your propensity to compare yourself to others lead you to unhealthy attitudes in your work and rest? I'm not asking for answers. If FOMO is a thing, if we are comparison shopping all the time, well, I don't live this way, I live better than that person, I live worse than this person, I fill in the blanks. Eating meat to idols, whatever examples you want to give, how is this changing your decision making about working and resting? Like, that's what just think about that, because we all do it. We all make decisions about how we're going to spend our time, and this idea of comparing our lives to other people's lives has a huge impact on that. That's just the reality. And here's what's so crazy about it as Americans, because we struggle to rest. I did a little research this week on this. Do you know that the average American works 1,800 hours a year? That's not even a 40-hour work week. So most of us work way more than 40 hours a week. I'm just saying the average American works 1,800 hours a year. Here's what's interesting. Out of all the Western civilizations, Western Europe, etc., we work somewhere between 300 and 500 hours more a year than every other Western culture. We are working ourselves to death as Americans because of this American work ethic that we have. Guys, that's 60 extra days a year that Americans are working more than our Western counterparts. And it's because here's how it leads into our next thing. Because we got to redeem our rest. I feel so guilty. Like the reason, to my daughter's words, the reason I stink at this so much is it's a symptom of the problem. It's because I feel guilty resting. Because here's how pathetic I am. If I go sit out on my back patio, and I'm just out there, I'm not going to take my phone, I'm just going to sit out there, and I'm going to be quiet. Within minutes, I'm going, yeah, that tree needs to get done, and this thing needs to get fixed, and I need to get over there and do that, and what I should be doing right now is all of these things. Who's with me on that? Yeah, look at the hands, guys. Seriously. We cannot. I mean, we're going to spend our communion time in silence. I told Tony today when I met with him, last week when I met with him, I said, Tony, I'm tempted to just sit and go, you know what we're going to do? We're going to spend 5 minutes, not even with communion, we're just going to spend 5 minutes being quiet. And there will be people in the room going, what in the world am I doing here? I didn't come to church for that. I can do this at home, but you won't. It's just the reality. We cannot sit and be still. For all kinds of reasons we talk about here often, but for all kinds of reasons, we struggle so hard to sit and be still. We're going to skip a few quotes. Sarah, right? You're in the back, yeah. So just jump down to the one that says, sleep is our biggest indicator that we trust in a sovereign God. And I don't sleep well. Charles Spurgeon said this. He said, you know what? Sleep, putting my head on the pillow and being able to do that well is the biggest indicator in my life that I'm trusting in a sovereign God. That I'm trusting that God's got this, whatever this is. And man, you can ask my wife. She's like, you were a fish last night. Flop, 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 flop. Not resting well. I can't. And that's because I'm unhealthy. And my guess is so are you. Spurgeon also said that I've come to kiss the wave that throws me upon the rock of ages. Right? Are we at that place of being able to go, you know, whatever this thing is in my life, can I really give it to the Lord in that way? Think about the Mary and Martha scene. Right? I was thinking about during our prayer time, Mary and Martha. So where Mary and Martha's sisters, right? Lazarus, that whole scene. But before he raises Lazarus from the dead, when he goes to their house the first time, it says Martha is busy, what? Working. And Mary is busy resting. Not resting, taking a nap in the other room. How's she resting? Sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening to what he has to say. And Jesus says, Mary has chosen the good thing, the thing I'm telling her, and it can't be taken from her. Guys, this is why in Matthew 11, Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. Give me your junk, give me your burdens, and I will give your soul rest. He doesn't say come to social media. He doesn't say, man, when I'm just so tired right now. Some of you are going to come to your church, and if you're like me, church, after church is sort of nap time. I'm going to crash for a little while because I was busy doing yard work all day yesterday, and I was busy doing blah, 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 and so I'm like, okay, I'm going to rest a little bit, have my Sabbath this afternoon. And he doesn't say come to Netflix and binge watch. And we do that as a family. Or come to social media and scroll endlessly and watch your reels. But we do that. He doesn't say, get this, he doesn't even say go on vacation. And man, I don't even know when our next one is, but I can't wait to get there. He says, come to me. Right? He's like, come to me. Whatever's going on in your life, The circumstance may not change, but you'll find your rest sitting here. But will we? And that leads us to our last point, and it does go quickly because we've talked about it all morning. What is the purpose of work and rest? And ultimately, here's what it is. Glorify God. The purpose of our work and the rhythm that God showed us in Genesis 1 and 2, that he's telling us here in this kind of obscure passage in 1 Corinthians, is he's saying we are to work and rest for the glory of God. Wait a minute, where do I get that? How about verse 31? So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do seems to include everything. You're working and you're resting. In everything, bring glory to God. That's the end game here for us. Why? Paul tells us later when he writes the book of Romans, he says, therefore, Romans 12, present your body a living and holy sacrifice, which is presentable to God, that you might prove what the will of God is, that which is good and perfect. Why? Because this is our spiritual service of worship is just giving our life to Jesus in our work. So when you're at work, I don't care if you're cleaning toilets or teaching God's word, do it for the glory of God. When you're resting, I don't care if you're sitting in your backyard or laying on your couch with the ball game on, do it for the glory of God. Like it's not about what you are and aren't doing. That's the point of the meat and the all that stuff that he's talking about. He's like, it's not about your behavior. It's about your motivation. Are you doing whatever you're doing for the glory of God? That's where because guys, that's where we'll find our rest. Our schedule might still be crazy. We might still not be getting enough sleep, but our rest will be so much better. Why? Because we'll know the good work we did for His glory. We'll know the Genesis 1, and that's why we can practice the Genesis 2. But we have to have that motivation in the right place. So as the music team comes up, I just want to ask you one last question. It says, do I see my whole life, work, rest, and everything in between as a stage to display the glory of God? So the music team can come up, and they're going to be passing out communion trays as the song is going to go on here in a minute. But what we're going to do, we are going to take some time during communion and just be silent. There'll be a song. The music team's going to play a song, and then I'm just going to let us. And then after the song, I'm going to let us just be still for a little bit. And then I'll come back up and I'll lead us in taking the cups together. But I want us to practice what we're preaching in a very real sense. Like can we, we've just, in some way, we've just worked. Like we worked to, what is God saying here? Like what's with all this stuff in this passage? Now let's let our response be a biblical response of rest, which is just sitting at the feet of Jesus. And I can't think of a better way to do that than to have communion. So let me just pray to that end. Father, I just thank you, Lord, for the truth that your gospel is the power to work and to rest. That the same grace that brought us to life so that we can work for you, we can offer our body a living and a holy sacrifice acceptable to you, is also the same power to settle down into you and find our rest there. So Lord, I want to pray right now that you would remind us that your invitation is to come. It is to cease striving so that there is space for us to know that you are God. Lord, I pray that you would quiet our hearts so that we have the beautiful reminder of who you are and what you've done. For from you and through you and to you are all things. To you be the glory forever and ever. Amen.